Hey, welcome to a rewind episode of Leading Thriving Cities. Occasionally, we like to go back into the library and grab some interviews that we absolutely loved and present them to you again. So thank you for joining us on Leading Thriving Cities. Enjoy this episode. Hey everybody, welcome to Leading Thriving Cities. My name is Chad Wright. I'm the founder of Forward Partners. This is our new show where we want to shine a spotlight on leadership in public service and have deep conversations about sustainability and how we create a thriving future for our cities. If you don't know my guest today, you are going to love her. My guess is you probably already have heard of her. It's Karen Daly. She has spent 31 years in public service here in Texas. She pioneered so many different things being a woman in leadership, and we have a great conversation about what life looked like 31 years ago as a woman diving into leadership and what it looks like today. She's been heavily involved with TCMA and ICMA. She is the founder of the Texas Women's Leadership Institute that does phenomenal work helping women come up through this business and learn what it takes to become a city manager. This is a wide-ranging conversation. She really has some good insight on what we need to figure out for the future. I'm so excited for you to have this conversation. Thank you for joining us on Leading Thriving Cities. Part of why we're doing this show in the first place is to have conversations about city management. I think it is a really misunderstood field. Like, as I've gotten into it, it's fairly new to me just the last few years working with y'all. I'm learning a lot, and I think you're going to bring a very interesting perspective because you have spent a lot of years in this field, and even after you retired, very connected to this field, right?
Yes.
TCMA, ICMA, just deeply connected. And so I think your perspective on these questions we wrestle with is going to be really interesting.
And the best part is that I don't have an employer or a stakeholder out there, so I can say exactly what I want.
There are no council members that you're going to have to answer to later.
Or future employers, no.
Pretty great, right? I like that.
Unfiltered.
Because you're immediately leaving here and going on vacation out of the country. So you don't even have to be beholden to us.
No.
You're just like, I'm going to say it, drop the mic, and leave.
Absolutely.
Please don't drop the mic. John would cry.
Yeah.
All right, so let's dive into the first question. And I want people to more fully understand what you face as a city manager. And so if there was one thing you could help everybody understand about that role, what would it be? What would be most helpful for them to understand?
It's funny. I think about like how I worked and what I did, and my daughters always would. When I went home, there was always perspective. I was like the big stuff.
You're the big shot.
And then I come home and they're like, Mom, the dishwasher, or this or that. So completely humbled every time. So I loved that fact. But when people ask them what I did, they would say she goes to meetings, and so I was always going to meetings, and they weren't wrong.
That's
but,
true.
A
lot of meetings.
When you describe it, that's not the way to describe it, from that perspective. It does involve a lot of meetings. I have other friends that think I was the mayor, and I kept saying, no, I am not the mayor. I am not elected. I am the appointed manager.
And I am professional.
And I run the city. And they're like, well, that's what the mayor does. And you're like, no, that's not what the mayor does, So there was there's always been that whole cross confusion that happens. But I like to describe it as we're in for the long game. We're not here for the next election. Yeah. We're actually here to make sure that this community is thriving in the future. And so we are the paid professionals that are the long game. Yeah. And other times I describe myself as a nicely paid migrant worker because
you move so often.
Yeah, which is not wrong either. So all those descriptions are kind of all the same.
I love what you're talking about with the long range perspective, right? Because you have an elected council who is usually about what do I need to do to get elected again? Or here's the one thing that I ran because I'm pissed off about this thing and I'm going to get this changed and then I'm out, right?
Yeah.
There is no, how are we going to pay our bills in 20 years?
Right.
They're not as focused. Now, there are some probably long-range council members that focus on it, but for the most part, there is a very short range.
Right.
Somebody has to think about the long term.
We need more green space. Let's reserve some space. They're like, no, we could put tax dollars on that. Well, no, but residents want green space. They want to feel connected, walkable, all those things. So let's plan that. Yeah. And we are the protectors of those long-range plans.
Yes. That's interesting. So how hard is it wrestling through that, through your career with different councils and different staffs even, because even they have different perspectives, right? wrestling through that to say, I'm going to protect this because everybody has such a different measure of success.
Yes.
You're looking at it going, here are my measures based on this long-range view. They have their measures based on short-range view. They may look at it and go, if our tax revenue is going up, I am a successful council member.
Right.
And you're going, but wait, parks, all these other things that we need, hospitals, whatever it is. How, as you wrestled through that, what was the challenging piece of that?
It was kind of that shared vision. How do you get everyone to share a common vision?
Yeah.
And some people do that fairly well, and others just pushed against.
Yeah.
I have a whole thing. I type elected officials. So there's this whole thing I do on, and I'm like, and I can categorize pretty much everyone, watching a council meeting.
Outside of this, we need to collaborate and see, is there a tie to which Enneagram number they are and which type they are on your scale? I think that would be fascinating.
Oh, yeah, we should.
How good were you at sharing that vision and getting people on board? Was that one of your skills?
It was not with elected officials.
Okay.
It was always with the group that hired me, but not with the next group that came along.
So rebuilding those relationships when a new group came along.
I was terrible. I basically sucked. Which is why some of my tenures were very short in city management. But with the staff and with kind of the community, I could get that. I mean, but it was always this kind of like disconnect I had. So
interesting.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting field to kind of get into and learn, because it is not unusual to serve a place 2-3 years, get fired despite being very competent and very good at the job, and you move to the next place. And it's not like the next place is going, oh my gosh, you were fired, we can't hire you.
Right.
It's just expected that that's part of the process.
Ergo, the migrant status.
How was that with you? How did you get used to that? Like, was that something you just came up in public service and you just learned that's reality? Or was that jarring the first time or two that happened?
When I left my first job in Arlington to go to be an assistant city manager, I kind of knew that I was on a path to move.
Yes.
That I would not stay there forever.
Yeah.
And so I think it just became kind of routine. So, my husband and I had a routine about how we would look for that job. We would go secret shop that community. I would secret shop the school district because my daughters were school age.
Yep.
And I would do all that before I even applied for the job. So I did a heck of a lot of, that background work to make sure that the community was good for all of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So. Now, when you first got into the city management side and kind of got to that ACM level, you currently lead Texas Women's Leadership Institute with the goal of having more women in city management positions. When you first started, what was that ratio like? Oh,
I think it was like 8%. I mean, it was terrible.
Yes.
There were probably 4, in the whole state, in every size city.
Wow.
It was terrible. It was terrible. I could not see one to be one.
That is interesting.
They were not there.
Was there an innate sense of loneliness with that?
Yeah, in a way, it was kind of isolating because, I listened to a colleague. We were having I think we were at like a regular region meeting of city managers, and they were talking about this one guy who had applied for the city manager job in Greenville. Mm-hmm. And they're like, man, he really needs this job. I hope he gets it. And these were very sage managers.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, I'm the only female that applied for that job. I did end up getting the job.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, I've never been considered the one that needs the job. And I have been the breadwinner in the family.
Yeah.
And that was also antithetical to everything that everyone thought or knew. They're like, oh, no, she can't actually be bringing in the income for the family.
This is just a bonus for them.
Yeah. And so, I was so far ahead in that thinking. The other thing that was kind of the weird part that I kind of reflected on was I was the first professional in the city of Arlington, as in department head and above, to have a baby.
I bet that was a whole new dynamic.
They didn't know what to do with a pregnant woman. I mean, and it was crazy and insane.
Yeah.
And I didn't even think about it at the time.
Yeah.
It was more of like, I'm doing it. I'm pregnant. Yeah, I'll be back at work. And they're like, are you coming back? And I'm like, of course I'm coming back. I gotta pay the bills. But the idea that that someone was doing that, and it didn't dawn on me till much later that. Holy shit, I was the first one to do that.
I love that.
So it has been kind of weird to think, there's no one else doing this, and I would try to find women like, when you had a baby, how did that work?
Yes.
And things like that. So
there weren't even the basic policies in place for what does that look like in terms of
no
time
FMLA.
off. Yeah, that didn't exist.
Yeah. You took some sick leave if you're lucky.
It was so funny when FMLA, when we started having kids, it wasn't really even a thing. Yeah. And so the idea when I started getting into city management and working with people, and they're going, I'm going to be out for so many weeks for FMLA. I'm like, what is FMLA? Like when we had kids, my wife had the baby, and the next day I was back at work. There was no time off these weeks and weeks you could be with your family and support. It's crazy how that has changed.
Yeah, it is.
You and I had an experience a few days ago. You were kind enough to let me facilitate the first session for the Texas Women's Leadership Institute, the Sequoia class. Yeah. And we had such great conversations because there were a few people in there that had careers, decades, and they faced some of these same things. And they told stories of some of the really tough things they faced, being some of the first women in those departments. And to watch the younger generation watch that and see that was really, really fascinating. They have no idea how much it's changed. Like to them, this is just normal. Yeah. Y'all had to fight for every piece of this.
Right.
In that, how I'm curious through like Texas Women's Leadership Institute and all the different things you do, how much do you talk about that? How much do you dive into how far things have come?
I don't usually spend a lot of time doing it, and I think part of that is, my realization of, oh, wow, we really have come a long way.
Yes.
So I think since I stopped working, I've been able to be a lot more reflective on the experiences and what I was doing and what I was dealing with. Yeah. Because we had a discussion about pantyhose because and all the young ones are looking, going, pantyhose, and we said, it was in the dress code, and they're like, in the dress code?
Someone can force you to do this?
Oh my gosh. And we're like, well, of course, but we wore pantyhose. That's what we did. That's just what you did. Yeah. You also smoked in the office. So, we don't do that anymore either. But
things have changed in somewhat positive ways. Yeah. Depending on the day. Some days you need a cigarette in the office.
Right. But yeah, so it's like, light it all up then. Light up those pantyhose too. They are flammable. So, but the idea of what has changed, and we weren't just going along, and then none of us could remember when we stopped wearing pantyhose. The ones who'd been in the business over 25 years are like, well, I don't know, we just stopped wearing them.
We just stopped at some point. What's really funny is there were a lot of external challenges, obviously through that growth of you in your career, but also us as a society, like a lot of external challenges you had to fight. What were some of the internal challenges? What was one of the biggest things you had to overcome internally to advance in that career?
I think it was the fact that no one thought a woman should be doing it. And that included all of the men, almost. And I didn't really realize I was fighting this whole, like, you don't belong here and you really shouldn't be doing this, that's not your thing. Y'all do other things, know. And so the idea that I was sitting there in that space, kind of doing that, it didn't even dawn on me at the time. It was just like, heck yeah, I'm going to do it because I'm naturally challenged things. Anyway, so that was just going to be another piece of, I get this. I understand engineering. I understand the finance concepts. I'm just going to do it, And so that was kind of the piece I think that really, I didn't really think that I was like, kind of like threading this needle that was so minute, and the opportunities were so rare.
There's a strong sense of certainty I'm hearing from you, but did you always feel that internally, that I'm the Blues Brothers, I'm on a mission from on high? Did you always feel that internally?
Yeah, okay. I think when I pivoted, I have a master's in social work administration, so I was going to run a nonprofit, and then I discovered cities, and I went, oh, this is a lot better, and it pays a hell of a lot more. So I'm doing it. I'm going to go be a city manager, and I'm going to run the city. So that was kind of my thing. And once I did that and pivoted and got that second master's, I was all in.
Where did you start your public service career?
I was actually at the North Central Texas COG.
Okay.
And back then...
which is County of Governments?
Council of Governments.
Council of Governments, okay.
In the Dallas-Fort Worth area, it's a big deal. It runs a lot of the planning and... environmental work and a lot of things, and grants, takes grants for a lot of the cities. And I was fortunate to work for Bill Pitstick. I was his first female assistant. And it, he opened the door. He opened the door to all the managers in the region. I was able to work with them and staff their committees. He introduced me to people like Tom Landry. I mean, he was really fascinating.
Yeah.
And when I became a city manager, he had already passed away, but his sons, he had 3 sons that were still in local government. 2 of them reached out and said, our dad would be so proud of you. And I knew at that point, I was like, yes,
That had to feel great, didn't it?
It did. So he opened those doors. I taught him a lot about sexual harassment and what not to do.
I'm not going to ask how he learned those lessons.
Yeah. We just had a code. We said, SH, that's sexual harassment. Don't do that.
If you hear me say this, let's just knock off whatever we're doing. Okay.
Exactly.
That makes sense. That's so funny. So when you think back to the beginning of that career, and I'm really curious about this distinction, what advice would you give yourself in that moment, knowing what you know today? And is that the same advice you would give someone starting their career today, a woman who's getting into public service and says, I think I want to do that?
It would not be the same advice because things are so different.
It's a different world.
That's right. There's FMLA. There's no pantyhose. I mean, the
There's
world
no
has
smoking.
changed.
We've established that.
Exactly. The world has changed so much.
So what advice would you have given yourself back then?
I don't know if there's anything that I regret about the path I took.
Okay.
In getting there. I feel like my actions and what I did really kind of drove my career and where I was, and also kind of where people saw that space.
Yes.
And I made sure I stayed in kind of leadership roles in the professional organizations so that they, understood that, we can do this.
And that's been a big part of your career, right? Is not just the city management and the job, but being a part of TCMA, ICMA, all the different organizations.
Yeah, I think if I look back, I would have liked to have brought more women along with me. And at the time, they weren't really there, I would get female interns, and a lot of them are and a lot of the people that I got to work with are managers now. So to me, that's the kind of the beautiful legacy.
Yeah, you brought people along as you went. Was that the impetus behind starting TWLI to say we want more women on this path, and how do we bring them along?
Yeah.
So tell us just a little bit about that program briefly.
So I watched a couple of other states do kind of women's leadership academies. Michigan has the first one they started, and it's called 1650, which they wanted to take it from 16% female managers to 50% female managers.
Yeah.
And I was like, we should do that in Texas. And I would talk to my female colleagues. We had a little club, a little group.
Y'all have a very tight knit network, don't you?
Yeah, it's actually called Resisterhood. I hope they don't get mad at me for saying that, but that's what we call ourselves.
All right, that's our secret.
Yeah.
No one, don't worry, nobody's going to watch the first few episodes. We're fine.
And but I would complain to them that we need to do this in Texas. We just need to do this in Texas.
Yeah.
I mean, we're big enough. We need to do it. And they're like, okay, okay, all right. And so finally, I said, you know what? I had left city management. I was working part-time at ICMA. I said, I can do it. I think we're just going to do it.
Yeah.
And it was so funny.
See what happens.
They all went, oh, we're doing this now, Karen. I went, yeah, we're doing it now. I copied their application. I took their curriculum.
Yeah.
We launched it with not a lot of plans or preparation or even a schedule. We just said, we're going to do 5 seminars and blah, blah, blah. And we had kind of imagined it a couple of ways through the years. And then that first year, we got very practical about it. But yeah, it was kind of and they're like, wow, we're going to do this. Yeah. And then when we got 45 applications for our 20 spots the first year with a month's worth of marketing, and we were like, okay, we know there is space for this, and we know there is a strong need for it. So
I love it.
Yeah.
What's some of your favorite things you've seen come out of this? Because this is the 5th year, 6th year?
This is the 5th year.
5th year. What are some of the favorite things you've seen over the last 4 years?
I love the confidence that I watch them gain. People come in thinking I'm not enough, I need more, I need more qualifications, I need this. And all of a sudden they realize, hey, I am good enough. Hey, I can do this.
Yeah.
And so, and we do some things that they are miserable doing them. They hate them. They hate it, like an elevator pitch. Oh, they hate elevator pitch.
Yes.
And it's like, and I tell them that. I said, y'all going to hate this. You're not going to like it. But you know what? They come back and they go, darn it, that elevator pitch saved me.
So valuable. Yeah.
So yeah, we are kind of setting them up for those critical things that kind of help them move along. But I love the confidence that's gained. I love the mobility that I see. I mean, they move to better jobs, to city managers. Yeah. So it is so great to watch. Yeah. It's just...
and with the confidence, whether they say, yeah, I'm meant to be a city manager. I'm curious, are there any through the process that look at the whole thing and go, you know what, I'm actually better somewhere else or in a different role. I don't actually want to be a city manager. Yep. Have you encountered that at all too? Yeah. And I like the idea that it's no matter what the direction, there's confidence to say, this is the direction I want to go. Right. I like that. There's kind of a you're able to kind of decide what you want and make it happen.
You know, some are there because they know they want to move up, but they don't know what that looks like. Yes. And everybody wants a path. Yeah. I'm like, oh, no. The path's go like this. You know.
It's like spaghetti, right?
Oh, man, it's terrible. So it's like, no, there's not a way to go. You know, you can do it a lot of different ways. But I think the one part that they really kind of like find is their own kind of voice and their own piece of what they can contribute. And then the timing might not be right, and I'm very patient with them. I'm like, because no one who's in this program is ready to launch into city management. You're not selected because you're about to become a city manager. Right. We put people like from the wastewater treatment plant. Yes. I mean, we have
had a
women
detective in the last one.
Yes, we have women in all levels of the organization because we are planting. Yeah. We're in the long game, Chad. Yes. We are planning it for the future.
Yeah, I love it. Well, and one of the things we talk about a lot with this long game, I'm kind of the same way. I'm a decades-long thinker. Right. I'm less interested in today than I am 40 years from now. Yeah. And so part of what we're betting everything we're doing on is that in order for a city to thrive, the staff has to thrive. Yes. I don't know that cities are historically good at that. No. Some are better than others, but there's a lot of intentional work that has to be done to make that happen. You've been in a lot of places. You've seen and led a lot of different people in that time. What is the one thing we need to really rethink to say, in order for our people to thrive, we've got to change this?
Okay, I don't have one. I have a couple.
We'll take them. Let's go.
The first is, and my dear friend who's an HR director is going to kill me, but the HR process, the recruitment process, the hiring process. It is so long, archaic, and the inability for any organization to look like they really want to have someone work for them is inconceivable the way we have it structured now. Yes. We have this whole level, like, long piece, and we have got to be able, cities have got to be able to hire talent quickly. Not in 2 months, you know, because they're going to go somewhere else. Yes. And so it has got to be faster.
This is a theme that keeps coming up is Jim Collins in Good to Great says the most important thing is the right people in the right seats. And when your systems prevent the right people from saying yes, that's a real problem.
It is. It is.
What do HR departments like? How are they going to get there?
They're going to have to get blown up. I mean, completely blown up. Yeah. And you know, it's because we try to match everything to like civil service, to kind of this, the local government union kind of thing. And we've got to stop doing that. Yes. I mean, we've got to leave them like the public safety, civil service in a blob over here and just go, forget them. They're going to stay archaic and paramilitary, and we need to push this group through. Yes. And it needs to look very nimble and very flexible.
Because in the business world, if me as the owner of a company, if I'm out at a networking event, I run into a person and go, oh my gosh, they would be phenomenal for our next hire. Mm-hmm. We're a couple meetings away from hiring them. Like we don't have to go through this crazy process. And you want some sort of process. So it's not the good old boy system, but not so dense of a process that it's impossible to navigate. Yes. That's an interesting one. Okay.
So in one of my cities, I went through the process to be hired as a dispatcher. Yeah. So I went through all of their assessments. Yeah. And I
would have been a great dispatcher, by the way.
Well, no, because I don't sit for long periods of time very well. So no, it would have been and there would be complaints because everything's recorded. So I don't really think that would be my skill set. I love dispatchers though. I mean, they are awesome sauce. So that's like the best thing ever. But yeah, so I went through every test that they did, and it was really kind of, at the time I was thinking, oh yeah, I got this, I nailed it, you know, and I took like the firefighter. I mean, I tried a lot of the assessments because employees would complain about them. I'm like, well, I'm going to try it and see what it's like. But they were right. I mean, I could nail it and I could answer and I could like get the, but it was like, okay, but what you're missing is that connection that someone needs. And that connection to all those police officers who on purpose mumble in their microphones all day.
I do not understand this.
They do it on purpose.
Every ride out I've ever done, you'll hear them mumbling on the radio, and the officer will mumble back. And every single time I go, would it be helpful if y'all didn't mumble? And they're like, yeah, it really would. Yeah. So why don't we stop mumbling? I don't know. It's just what we do. Yeah. And I'm like, what? Why?
And if they know a certain dispatcher is calling, they mumble on purpose. I mean, they're mean that way.
The funny part is they start to understand the mumbles, and that's what I do not get is how they do that. It's crazy.
Well, I think it's so that they can't get the tape recording.
It's like their own code. Yes, there's a little protection there. Okay.
But I also found that we were hiring dispatchers from very unusual places.
Interesting.
Like one of our supervisors was at Walmart.
Yeah.
And the checker was fantastic. Yes. Great people skills, like multitasking, pulling everything. She goes, you'd make a really good dispatcher. Here's my card. Will you come apply? Yeah. And it's like, so I
love that idea.
We have to look at those transferable skills that are naturally in other people and get them in instead of spending money on the training. Let's figure out how we keep them.
That's a really interesting idea because one of the things that I wrestle with a lot when we do work with law enforcement is dispatchers. Yeah. They're often the way underpaid versus the trauma of that job, right? Mm-hmm. So in my mind, they're usually rated about hey, if you're taking payments for the utilities, here's that level, and here's dispatchers right there with them. Yeah. And then here's cops up here in terms of what they get paid, but also what they go through. The dispatchers actually go through some of the same traumas the cops do, but they're not compensated in the same way.
No, and they're on shifts.
Yes.
And they're called in.
It's such a hard job. And what I run into is they struggle to hire because there's this limited pool of people that know how to dispatch, right? Right. But, I've never had a single conversation with one of them go, hey, who do you know that is not a dispatcher that would make a great one? They just have the temperament, they got the personality. Right. I like that idea of being flexible with where we look, not just the limited pool we have, but all of humanity. Right. That is so interesting. Yeah. So what else? You said you had a couple things.
Oh, darn it. No, I've already forgotten a couple of them.
We're talking about the idea of what do we need to rethink entirely?
It's the flex remote. Is the other piece. I think that continues to hold a lot of cities back. Yeah. Certainly COVID really flipped that on its head, but we've got to do more. Yeah. And I think we can do more. And along with that, the last part of my thing is kind of core hours. We've always had this 9 to 5, 8 to 5 expectation. I don't think the residents have that. I don't think the residents would mind if it was different, as long as it's communicated, understood, and everyone gets it. And people are so scared to change that.
What does different look like in your mind?
A lot of cities do Friday, half Fridays or no Friday. Yeah. And that seems to work. A lot of people don't want that.
And the city doesn't collapse.
Right. They used to say it was for the benefit of the employees so they could do doctor's appointments. Well, doctors don't do Fridays either.
No, they're off
or
by
dentists.
Friday afternoon.
Nobody does it, so you're like, well, that's not going to help. But it would help the employees with everything else that they're doing. Yeah. But I think the other part of that challenge is going to be how do you keep a culture? Yeah. And how do you keep your employees engaged if they are remote or flexed all the time?
Yeah. I think that's the interesting thing as a society we've been wrestling through. We've been doing it badly. Mm-hmm. It's interesting. I just saw a post by Adam Grant today. He's an organizational psychologist, and he said there's a study just came out of the last few years, and what they're finding is when you force people back to the office, they're actually less productive, and the profits actually go down in the organization. And so there's a middle ground we need to find because in-person collaboration, we talk all the time about our rhythms, and when we get off, this has been a weird month where I've either been sick or traveling the whole month. Right. And so my team and I, we worked together yesterday on the 22nd for the second time this year, and we have felt it. It has been weird. We've been productive, but it has not been that connection and that collaboration. And so we need a middle ground, and it's finding that. And with cities, it's even harder. Like with us, we can just decide we want to do something different. Right. With a city, it's like, okay, how do we put the policies in place and communicate this? And I think we've done it in a lot of ways. We've tried some things and learned some things, but done it kind of badly. Mm-hmm. But there needs to be some intentionality behind it. Yep. That's going to be an interesting one to tackle, because on the other side of it, we're trying to retain employees.
Right.
And you got some companies going, hey, you can just be fully remote. You can spend time with your kids, and as long as you're getting your work done, we're fine. And I don't know if that's necessarily the way to go, but that's what people are looking at. And they're going, oh, and that pays a little bit more money? Why wouldn't I go do that?
And I don't have to commute, and I don't have to. So, yeah, and that's a big challenge. And I think that's going to be very important to wrestle. Yes. Resolve in order to make sure that the employees and your workforce are thriving so that your city thrives.
Yeah, I love this. That's amazing. Yeah. Well, thank you for this conversation. So you are now officially retired. But not really.
Retired.
You weren't retired. You work harder than any retired person I've ever met in my life.
I was retired. I was just working part-time. And now I'm just doing a little bit of part-time.
Just for fun.
Yeah. Well, because it's my passion. I feel like I was lucky to kind of forge that way through the local government leadership as a female. And I just don't want to see anyone else doing it alone. Yeah. And so that's where my passion lies. And that's where I'm going to kind of continue to put some energy.
I love it, because as much as you were done forging that path, you're not done forging the future. No. And these women, I saw, as I watch and I see how they look at you and your stories and your path, and there's something special there that you bring to the table that nobody else does.
Well, I don't want to scare them off, but in the iconic philosopher Taylor Swift, because I know how much you like pop culture, Chad, wondering if I'd get there quicker if I was a man is a huge part of what I continue to kind of think about. But I think that's what I want to make sure that other women don't have to wonder about.
I love that. That's incredible. Thank you for this conversation.
Thank you.
I'm excited to keep connecting with you and going on this journey.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us for Leading Thriving Cities. You might also like our other podcast, The Leader Lab. You can find it on all the major podcast platforms and on YouTube. Just search for The Leader Lab. Each episode is under 10 minutes. It's just a quick thought to help you level up your leadership. You'll also find all the other leadership content we are putting out on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Just search for @ForwardPartner.